Hi everyone, welcome to TSAM Digital. My name's Amy and today I'm joined by Neil Fatharly, who is Senior Advisor at Global Impact Initiative. So hi Neil, it's great to have you on the channel.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. So of course you're a speaker at the Summit for Asset Management ESG, so we wanted to catch up with you ahead of the event just to find out a bit more about yourself and your work. So could you just tell us a little bit about your career and the companies that you work for?
Yes, I've had over 30 years in fund management, primarily in UK, Europe, and Asia. My main area of interest has been around distribution, marketing, and product development. I've worked at companies like M&G, Standard Life Investments, T. Rowe Price, and I've had about 15 years working as a management consultant with people like Accenture and KPMG.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I was just going to say, because I know that you've got quite a bit of distribution and marketing experience, although you've dabbled in a lot of different areas. So, could you tell us a little bit more about those roles and a bit about the challenges in those areas?
Yes, the CMO roles that I've worked in and worked for people who've had CMO roles over the last, particularly over the last 10, 15 years, the challenges faced by marketing officers or people in charge of marketing has significantly changed. I think primarily that the one biggest thing I think is the use of data. Particularly for fund managers, traditional long only managers, they've been heavily intermediated. But the control of data and the usage of data, it has kept people on their toes, but also access to data, I think, has been one of the greatest challenges throughout that. I'll come back to that in a minute. The other challenges that fund managers have faced in this space is obviously regulation. Everyone puts regulation up as a headwind, but actually some of the regulators, particularly the UK FCA, in certain areas around things like fintech, are actually quite accommodating and trying to help the industry produce product and again use the data around fintech. Certain regulators are trying to work with the industry to improve the client experience. Other things that are slightly softer, which probably goes across most fund managers, but particularly dealing with clients, is the culture of the organisation. We've had the rise and fall of staff fund managers. On the way up, it's very easy to generate profile and assets, but on the way down, it can be very difficult. So the culture of fund managers has changed. The legacy systems in place, particularly around distribution and client reporting, the client is ever wanting more and more proximity to data, but many fund managers are still leaning on legacy systems that, I'm not saying they're outdated, but they're perhaps not meeting the client requirements, that particularly in the digital age. And COVID has obviously escalated the use of digital support over the last 2 or 3 years. Some fund managers have really grabbed the opportunity, and some are still struggling with a traditional face-to-face model, meeting clients, etc.
Absolutely, great points there. And like you say, there are so many different things that come into creating a client experience, from the regulation to the data to the company culture. So if we look at those in a little bit more detail, can you sort of give us a bit of an insight into what you think achieves a really good end-to-end client journey? Like you said, some of the regulations support this. How can data be better used, and how are those company cultures changing?
I think company cultures are changing. There's a lot more collegiate approaches. I think the rise and the fall of the star fund manager and also star product. There's been some mega products that I've seen and worked with that on the way up it's great, but on the way down it's been very difficult. I think traditional fund managers have struggled with the end-to-end client journey because the clients that they're dealing with are a lot more kind of the segmentation around clients is becoming much more uh, detailed. I think a lot of fund managers have shied away from retail consumer and perhaps focused on institutional or GFIs or wholesale clients. But to maintain the proximity to the end clients, fund managers are having to work a lot harder to maintain that brand and profile. A significant spend has been, and some fund managers have got a great track record, but their client experience, in a sense, falls down because of the use of data, the various touch points of being able to understand where your client is engaging with you. Some fund managers are capturing that very well, but some, as I said earlier, are relying very much on the relationship management role and not necessarily underpinning the client experience by use of data. I think one area that has changed significantly, and it comes back to your earlier point around culture. Many fund managers, perhaps over the last 5 or 10 years, had seen marketing very much as a support function. It was a sales support function. What I'm seeing a lot more now, and people have recognized this primarily because of the pandemic, marketing's obviously sometimes owns the digital platform or the website. Over the last 2 or 3 years, primarily because of COVID and the fact that we've all had to work from home, the ability of clients to, or the need to engage with clients on a digital platform has escalated, and that tends to sit in marketing. So I'm seeing marketing much more as a strategic partner to the rest of the distribution or the sales teams and the products team. Whereas before, I think in certain places it was seen very, very much as a support function. And as marketing has become much more techy, and some of the the martech platforms and apps really help understand the client journey, people engaging on websites, CRM, a number of firms that I've worked in and worked with, the CRM platform, which is kind of the underpins all the client experience, is perhaps owned and governed by marketing. But again, it's the management of the data. It's not just getting the data, it's the manipulation of the data to get the data that's needed in the right hands at the right time to actually help enhance the end-to-end client journey. There's a mass of data, but the real skill set is actually filtering it and getting it in the right hands for relationship managers, but also using that data to help the kind of senior CMOs and senior executives understand what's going on in their clients. I think sometimes, particularly things like CRM platforms, they're imposed on sales teams because management wants better MI. The successful implementation of technology to help end-to-end client journeys kind of is done from a management perspective, but also from the relationship management's perspective, and ultimately not getting in the way of the client experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think marketing's definitely risen in the ranks across the industries with the digital age and the pandemic. All these platforms out there, it's really highlighted how crucial they are in the business. And when we think about client segments, because you touched on that, so the marketing teams are using data to better identify which clients' needs are what, how they're evolving. So how does ESG add another layer of complexity to this? Because I know that it feeds into what your clients need and how you should alter your distribution plans.
Good question. I think ESG, the asset management, has obviously woken up to the fact is that ESG isn't going to go away. It's interesting since the various issues around Ukraine. A couple of people have been saying ESG is going to struggle a bit, but actually the momentum behind ESG globally, I personally think it's just a kind of a bump in the road. And I know there's been net outflows in certain kind of ESG kind of funds, but I think the momentum from a client's perspective isn't going to go away. From a fund management perspective, a lot of the focus in fund managers and professional services firms has been about the client reporting. Different regulators are asking for different requirements. So if you're cross-border, operating, say, from the UK into Europe, you've got a whole mass of UK legislation and obviously European legislation that's got to be embedded into existing client reporting systems. I think the biggest issue for distribution and ESG is actually around the communication. The reporting gets a lot of the focus, but the ability to communicate the process of what you're doing is becoming, I think, quite a headache for many fund managers, because a lot of them have developed kind of in-house processes that for a particular ESG principle that's created in-house, and a particular client that they're engaging with may use something like Bloomberg, and the synergies between what the client wants and what the fund managers are creating for their own for in-house purposes are disconnected. And then to communicate that consistently for a variety of clients who may be using different kind of methodologies, there's a lot of work and head scratching around how to actually that to come together. There's no consistency currently in the communication process around investment process. The reporting and the regs is there, but there's another layer of communication above that many fund managers are struggling to meet what their clients are asking them for, particularly on the institutional side. The retail side, I think the regulator is doing the best it can to keep up with the regs. And there's the whole issue around greenwashing. Now, many fund managers are putting a lot of resource into making sure that everything is consistent, but there's bound to be a few rogue people that, in a sense, could kind of be creating greenwash products or literature that will get the attention, but I think the vast majority of the industry is putting a lot of thought process into this. And also, it comes back to my point about legacy IT systems, particularly on the reporting side, where they're just about coping with non-ESG reports. Another layer of client requirements from a regulatory perspective, and some large clients wanting bespoke reports, bundling that into one report. Again, another issue that is causing a lot of issues around cost and usage of IT and support.
Some valid points there. And I think thinking about where the industry needs to improve then on that basis, to improve that communication layer and add all of that complex data and those extra reporting requirements into one place, do you think the solution is technology and enhanced platforms to put it there in front of the fund managers? Or is there another thing that needs to be done from the regulators, from the fund managers themselves?
I think fintech is going to play a big part in this. Some of the work that I've seen from places like Oxford University and Imperial College London, there's a lot of good apps that are coming on the market. And actually, it's not just the apps, it's actually a lot of fund managers or ex-fund managers are going, who people who've worked in distribution know what clients want. And they're developing quite some interesting and sophisticated applications that can get bolted onto existing systems to make it a lot easier. So technology can be leveraged. It's not the solution, but there are people who worked in the industry, know what clients want, and are actually bringing things to the table that are actually very useful. And people like the Investment Association Engine, they're supportive of incubation ideas, working with the regulator to make the applications or the technology, particularly not just in ESG, but also client reporting and other aspects of client engagement, in a sense, a lot easier for fund managers, and it's a lot cheaper. But again, it comes right back to the ownership and the manipulation of data. The comms process understood, but if you know what's going on with the data that you're capturing and utilizing it, ownership and the management of the data, I think, is the key principle of not just ESG, but client engagement going forward.
That's very true. And I think, we've got your panel discussion on creating sustainable finance value chain. So perhaps we can touch on that there. And of course, we have the data stream at the Summit for Asset Management ESG as well. So we can hopefully have more discussions around that ownership and how to kind of integrate in the rise of fintech. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you at the event, Neil. But I think that's all we've got time for today. So thanks for joining us on the channel.
Okay, thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you in November.
Of course. And everyone can register now for the Summit for Asset Management ESG on our website. Thanks for watching.